perhaps a development here, because from our Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr, we are now hearing the Pentagon has made a proposal to send as many as 100 special forces to serve as advisors to the Iraqi military inside Iraq.
So let's bring in our Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr. So give us an idea, Barbara. The president, has he signed off on this plan? We understand he's been made aware of it.
Good morning, John and Michaela. What we are hearing from our sources is the Pentagon is prepared now to very quickly send 100 or so military advisors to Iraq, to the ground in Iraq, as soon and if the president signs off on this option. We have every reason to believe that is what is being discussed this afternoon, and that is what the Pentagon at least believes is in front of him, and they are prepared to execute that option very quickly. So what are we talking about? We're talking about 100 special forces, Green Berets, Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, going to Iraq and basically going to locations around the country, Iraqi brigade headquarters, and advising the Iraqi troops, but also very much collecting intelligence, we are told, about ISIS, about these Sunni militant fighters, where they are, who they are, where they're located, where their weapons are, how they're moving around. One of the reasons we're not seeing airstrikes is because the U.S. still lacks real clarity on the intelligence picture for the ISIS fighters. It's been very difficult to track them. They move around a lot. You know, the videos show it's guys on the ground with, you know, pickup trucks and AK-47s and machine guns. This is a very difficult thing to target. So the U.S. wants to get more intelligence. These military advisors will do some of that. We are told already U.S. military aircraft are flying over Iraq, manned aircraft off the deck of the carrier George H.W. Bush. They are collecting intelligence, purely a reconnaissance mission. But I think the big question is going to be, if this is what the president is about to announce, it puts troops back on the ground in Iraq, perhaps not in combat directly, but as one Army official said to me a short time ago, if somebody's shooting at you, it's combat.
Very good point, Barbara. We appreciate that. We want to turn to our military analyst, retired Lieutenant Colonel Rick Francona, former military liaison officer to the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. So we heard you actually mouth and say the words out loud. If they shoot at you, you're in combat. Sounds like boots on the ground to many people. You agree or not?
It is boots on the ground. I think they're parsing the words with they're not combat forces, they're advisors. It's a meaningless designation.
Okay.
These are Army special, mostly going to be Army Special Forces who train for this mission. They're going to go out and advise Iraqi units. Unfortunately, this is the first step. And this is how you get drawn into these situations. So they have to make it clear what the mission actually is. They'll also be in a great position, if they're going to be out with the Iraqi units, to call in any airstrikes that are there. As we talked the other day, it's always best to have a U.S. person with American eyeballs on the ground to see what we're actually trying to shoot at.
You can be clear with a mission, but won't that sort of become more apparent to you once you're there and do have eyes on the ground?
Right, yeah, and what we have to guard against is what we call mission creep. Okay, we're going to start advising, then we're going to start calling in airstrikes, and then, well, the airstrikes aren't enough, are we going to bring in additional U.S. support? So this is a very tricky situation that we're getting into right now.
There's a military issue, as you say. What will they be doing and where will they be doing it? Then there's a political issue as well, because the president has said, you know, all options are on the table except boots on the ground. And in 90 minutes at the White House, he could be announcing that there will be boots on the ground.
Right. And once the airstrike starts, then we get into what is the unintended consequences of that. Because now we're going to start bombing the ISIS people, but no doubt we'll be taking on some of these Sunni tribes that have allied with ISIS. Now we're going to be killing Iraqi Sunnis.
Just to be clear, from a military tactical standpoint here, why would you do this before any airstrikes? There is some use to this.
Oh, if they can get out there and get the Iraqi forces to stand up and fight, we may not need the airstrikes. I suspect we will. But the Iraqis need to stand up and fight, and right now they are just having an abysmal time out there in the field.
Another portion of this is the leadership in Iraq, and we've talked about this. We know that many voices in Washington are saying Malachi's got to go. In fact, we just heard from Secretary of State John Kerry address the question. Let's listen to this sound, and then I want you to give us your reaction.
Nothing that the president decides to do is going to be focused specifically on Prime Minister Maliki. It is focused on the people of Iraq.
But it may benefit
Shia,
Maliki.
Sunni, Kurd. Well, that's up to the people of Iraq to decide, but the United States is deeply concerned about the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, ISIL as we know it, that has moved in. They represent a threat to every country in the region. They're more extreme even than al-Qaeda, and they are threatening the United States and Western interests.
So is Secretary Kerry correct there in saying that the U.S. can't force a regime change, that it has to come from within?
Of course it has to come from within, and of course other people have called for Maliki to step aside just in the best interest of Iraq. But this is a two-layered problem. First of all, we've got to stop ISIS. We've got to fix the tactical situation on the ground. This is the imminent problem. And removing Maliki is not going to fix that. Removing Maliki, that's something we need to look at down the road to get Iraq back and get Iraq's house back in order. But right now, we've got to address the initial threat to Baghdad, the initial threat to that regime, and we've got to contain ISIS.
And if that's what the president is going to announce, that the U.S. is sending 100-odd special forces to Iraq, it does seem like he will not wait for regime change or Maliki to step aside before the U.S. does take some action. Let me ask you, Colonel, have you ever served as a military advisor to troops overseas, to other troops in other countries?
I have, in Jordan.
And how close are you to potential danger then?
Well, it depends on what you're doing, but these guys are going to be in danger. They're going to be out there in the field advising these guys, and that's what you want, because there's nothing better than a U.S. Army officer telling these guys what to do.
All right, Lieutenant Colonel Rick Francona, thank you so much for being with us. Stick around because we have some more questions for you on different issues. Just a reminder, again, the president will be making a statement at 12:30 p.m. We will cover that for you live. It's very important. Obviously, going to be some kind of policy pronouncement on what the U.S. intends to do about Iraq.
Take a short break here ahead of this hour. Terrorists among us, 2 alleged would-be jihadists arrested in Texas in 2 separate cases. We'll take a look.
Plus, crisis at the border. Texas saying it cannot afford to wait for Washington taking its border security into its own hands.